Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about the Visual Basic message box. So quite simply, message box is in the last video we talked about an input box and how we can get information from the user so Visual Basic can do something about it. In this case, we're going to talk about a message box, and this is how we can give information to the user. So pretty simply, we could write message box, and then in quotes we could put, "Hey, this is your message." And we hit play. Boom. Hey, this is your message. There you go, right? And then we can also, similar to input box, we can do things with it. So by default, it is VB OK only. So if I go back, you see button says equals VB OK only. And what that means is, if I run this again, you can see how I have an OK button only. That's it. So if I type in VB critical, and run it, see how it gives me the little warning sound and says, "Hey, this is your message," like I did before, but it puts this little X in front of it. So you might use this if you were using a message box to deliver a warning message to the person that you're using, like, "Hey, stop." That's why I've got the X in, right? But let's go back. We won't go over the applicate and buttons too much, but we also have VBA abort, retry, and ignore. So if you run this one, it gives you abort, retry, and ignore buttons. And I'm just kind of showing you the options because that's what we want to do in these videos, show you kind of the things you'll use. These things basically just say, hey, look, make the first button the default button, the second button the default button, and stuff like that. We went over exclamation. There's information. So if we hit that, it gives us the little I, like information. What else do we got here? Message box help button. You could put in a help button. Message box right just makes the text read on the right. We have OK cancel, which is one you're going to use probably quite a lot. So there's also yes no cancel, VB yes no cancel. So if we do like the OK cancel, you can see how it gives OK and cancel buttons. Yes, there's yes no or yes no cancel. So let's use yes no. Now, the reason you care about these buttons, and we'll put a title, because I think it's always good practice if you're going to use an input box or a message box to give it a title. A lot of people probably won't use this, especially if you're just doing code for yourself. But if you're going to do code for somebody else, it just looks kind of ugly when the message box just says Microsoft Excel on the top left. So, we'll put message here, but we could type whatever we wanted to. And so now we run it, it says message up here. All right, so we made this VB yes no. Okay, so why would we do that? Well, we do that because this message box takes us to another thing that we have to do. So in this case, let's act like we're having dinner with VBA. So we're going to type dinner as string. And so string is just a string of text, so not a numeric value, basically. So we declare that variable dinner as string, and then we're going to say this variable equals my message box. Now, because we're attaching this to a variable, we're going to have to put all my stuff in parentheses. All right. And so now when we run this, it's going to make, let me step through it so you can see what happened here. So it's got a variable dinner. And so you see it made dinner 6. And you might be wondering what that is. So 6 is just the numeric value of hitting the yes button. If we had hit no, go back here, we hit no, it's going to make it 7. If we had like an OK cancel, OK is 1, cancel is 2, abort is 3, retry is 4, ignore is 5, yes is 6, VB no is 7. And I'll put the link to that in the video, but I'm going to bring this over just so you can see. This is from docs.microsoft.com, and if you're going to get into coding, you're going to use this a lot. So we have message box arguments, and you can see all these arguments that we could have used. And then down here, message box return values, and we had yes is 6. So if you're wondering where I'm getting all that, that's there, and I'll like I say, I'll try and put a copy of that in the notes. So why would we do that? Well, maybe we want to do something after this with this information. So if they say yes or no, we want to have them do something else, right? So this is where we're going to do what's called an if argument. So if argument usually is basically saying if this happens, then do that. Otherwise, do that other thing, right? So sometimes you call it an if argument, sometimes you call it an if-then argument, and then sometimes you have if-then else. So in this case, we've got 2 choices they're going to make, yes or no. So we're going to do an if-then else. So we're going to say if dinner, our variable, equals VB yes, then message box, good for you, your mom would be proud, bless her heart. All right, and then we'd say, and we could end it right there, but we also want to deal with, well, if we were going to end it, we'd have to type end if. And this is actually a good practice now that I'm thinking about it. Let's go back here. If we were going to type an if argument, as soon as you type this line, it's always a good idea to just go ahead and type end if, because you're going to need that there. If there was only one answer, and I'll cover this too, so if we go back and it's on the same line, you don't have to do an end if. So we can run this, for instance. Hey, this is your message. Oh, but anyway, we said yes. Good for you. Your mom will be proud. Bless her heart. Right? I didn't change this. Are you hungry? I was going to say. So now it says, are you hungry? You type yes. Say, good for you. Your mom will be proud. Bless her heart. Right? So in this case, I only had one thing. If this is true, then do this. But we didn't talk about what the no was. We only talked about what the yes was. So since I have 2 options here, a simple if-then isn't enough. I have to do an if-then else. So since there's more than just the one if and then, we put this on a new line, and then we'd have to cap it with end if. Because if we run this now, see it says compile error block if without end if. So because we put this message box on a new line, now it's a problem. But if we put in an end if here, and we run it, and you hit yes, it's fine. But what happens if we hit no? Well, it just doesn't do anything, right? So if we want to do something with no, we would say else if dinner equals VB no, then, oh, I think else if is made one word, sorry. Message box, and I'm tabbing indent like this because this is just a stylistic thing. You know, you really should eat. Your mom will be disappointed. So now, if we've got an if this is VBS, then do this. Otherwise, if it's VB no, then do this. So we say yes, good for you, bless her heart. We say no, you know, you really should. Oh, I meant to type eat. All right. So now let's take it a step further. So if we want to make it cancel, so sometimes if you're doing a message box, you're going to do that because you want two things, but maybe if you accidentally hit this and you just want to cancel out of it, you don't want it to run, you might have a message box or a cancel button. So we'll say else if dinner equals VB cancel, then exit 7. So now if we run it and we hit cancel, it just doesn't do anything else. So anyway, these ifs, I think we might have been able to just make these if too, but let me see. Oh, yeah, no. So we could have done this a different way. Let's go back. And if. And you'll find that you know, when you're writing VBA code, a lot of times there's oh, I didn't want to do that. There's multiple ways to do what you're trying to do. So in this case, we could do it really complicated by making each one a separate argument. So if we do this, yes, no, and cancel, right? So in this case, we made our first if argument and then ended it. And we made our second if argument and then ended it. And then we made our third argument and then ended it. Now, let's step through this so you can kind of see what's happening here. If we go to our dinner message box, are you hungry? Pulls it up. We type yes. You can see down here, it gave us this value 6, which is VBS, right? So if dinner is VBS, then you can see that it's highlighted then. So it's going to go to this message box and say, good for you, Mama Be Pie, bless her heart, right? And then we end that if argument. Now it says if dinner was VB no, well, it wasn't VB no. So it just skips right over that. If dinner was VB cancel, then exit sub. Again, it wasn't VB cancel, so it just skips right over that. Okay? But that's, you can see I added more lines to do all that. So instead of doing that, let's just take that out, and we'll say else if. And then we're going to delete that end if. And then we're going to call this else if. And exit sub. Now, because I'm only doing one thing after my then, I can put these all in the same line too. All right. So now my code is pretty simple. Oh, wait a minute. I think I can't put those all in the same line. Never mind. So after my thens, I gotta put them on new lines. Now let's try it. Yeah. Okay. Because this if is a series of else ifs, they all have to be, like the then has to be on a new line. But you can see I blocked off end if. Now, I talked a little bit about this indenting. I don't have to do this. I could do like this. But you can see my code all kind of runs together like this, right? So by indenting, you can sort of use stylistic sort of things in your blocks of code. Now, typically your programs are going to be more complicated. They're going to have, you know, hundreds of lines of code a lot of times. So if I do something like this, where I indent this once, and then this twice, and this three times, and this 4 times, or whatever, it kind of gives you the idea that these are all steps in a block, and then if I leave my end if back here, that's sort of the end of that block. So then if I start a new line of code, you get the impression that all of this is part of the same block of code that all goes together. Some people might not do multiple indents like that. Some people might just do like indent once. And obviously if you indent too much, you start running off the page on the right. So however you want to do that, that's fine. The indents, it doesn't really care about those. So it's just a way for you as a programmer to make it in a way that kind of in a small glance you can kind of get what's going on. And you might even indent that 1 second, indent that 1 second, so that basically you know, you sort of understand that that's one. Maybe you bring that one back like that or something. I don't know. You can do it however you want to do it, but it's just however you want to make it so that it makes sense to you. That's what you do. But anyway, that's how you use a message box, and then that's how you can add all the different buttons to the message box. And there are custom user forms that I'm going to get into way later, where you can make your own box that has all the buttons and junk that you could possibly imagine. That's really, really complex and sort of high level, so that'll be, you know, a lesson far down the road. But at least now you understand how to make a message box, and then how to make an if argument so that depending on how people answer that message box, it does certain things. So anyway, on to the next lesson.